Snow fell softly over the quiet colony on planet Vorin. The wind howled outside as the sky turned dark. Inside a small house made of metal and stone, a man named Tomas sat near the fire. He lived alone at the edge of the woods, far from the main city. His house was old but warm, and silence was his only friend. Tomas liked the silence, but tonight something felt different. The air was too still, too cold. As if it was holding its breath, he stood up to check the door, just in case. Before he reached it, he heard it knock-knock. Soft and slow. Then another knock, weaker this time, almost like a whisper. Tomas stopped, heart pounding. No one ever came here, not in this storm, not at night. He grabbed his old plasma tool and slowly opened the door. Outside stood a tiny figure. Shivering in the snow, she was small, maybe 8 years old, her skin pale blue, and her big eyes glowing softly. In the dark, she looked up at him, lips trembling, voice barely a whisper. "Can I please stay with you?" "My mother died today." Tomas stared at her, not sure if he had heard her right. Snow clung to her long, dark robe, and her bare feet were red with cold. He looked around. No ships, no adults, no sign of anyone else. Just her, alone in the freezing wind. He didn't speak, just stepped aside. And she walked in, slow and careful. She collapsed near the heater and curled up like a kitten. Tomas locked the door and watched her, unsure what to do. She looked alien, yes, but not dangerous. Her cheeks were sunken, like she hadn't eaten in days. He went to the kitchen and warmed some soup. When he brought it to her, she looked up with wide eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, and took the bowl in both hands. Her fingers were thin and shaking, but she drank the soup slowly. Politely, "What's your name?" Tomas asked, sitting nearby Luma. She said softly, "I'm Talari." He nodded. Though he had never met a Talari before, he had only heard rumors. Peaceful beings, soft-spoken, smart. Her eyes blinked slowly as she finished the soup, then fell asleep right there on the floor. Tomas placed a blanket over her and sat back down. Staring at the fire, he didn't know why he let her in. She could be lying, she could be trouble. But his gut told him this girl had truly lost everything. Outside, the storm grew louder. Wind banging against the windows in the dark sky above. Something blinked. A red light moved across the clouds. A drone. Tomas narrowed his eyes and stepped outside for a second. The drone hovered, scanned the area, then flew away. Why would a drone be searching here in this storm? He looked back at the door, his mind uneasy. Something about this night was wrong. Back inside, the girl was still asleep, her tiny hands clutching the blanket like it was life itself. Tomas sat back down, but he didn't close his eyes. Not yet. There were questions to be asked, and something told him danger was coming. But for now, there was just the fire, the storm, and the soft breathing of a lost alien child. And a man who had opened his door to something much bigger than he understood. Asterisk morning light slipped through the frost-covered window. Tomas stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of warm grain stew behind him. He heard soft footsteps, careful and light. He turned to see the alien girl standing in the hallway. Her small frame looked even thinner in the daylight. Her skin shimmered slightly in the soft glow, like frozen glass touched by sun. "Good morning," Tomas said gently. Not wanting to startle her, she nodded slowly, her large violet eyes blinking. "Are you hungry again?" he asked, pointing to the bowl. She gave a shy smile and walked over. Sitting on the edge of a wooden chair as she ate, Tomas watched her closely, not with fear, but curiosity. "Your name is Luma," he said, repeating what she had told him. Last night, she nodded again. "Yes, my mother called me Luma." Her voice was soft, almost too soft to hear. "Do you know where you are?" Tomas asked. She looked out the window. "I think a human colony near the frozen belts of Voron. That was correct, which surprised him. "Do you remember how you got here?" he asked. She held the bowl tightly and stared at her hands. "Our ship was attacked. The bad ones came for her." For what she knew, Tomas stayed quiet, letting her continue. "They wanted the key. She didn't give it to them. She told me to run, to hide in the snow, and never talk to anyone unless I felt something kind." Tomas leaned forward, "And you felt that here?" She looked up at him, her eyes wet. "Yes." A long silence filled the room as the wind outside gently tapped on the window. "I don't have anyone left," she whispered. "It's just me now." Tomas felt a strange pain in his chest. Not fear, not regret, just a quiet ache. He stood up and poured her more stew. "You can stay for now," he said, "as long as you need to rest." Luma smiled a little and nodded. "Thank you." That day passed slowly, and Luma never left his side. She helped clean the dusty shelves, stacked logs near the fire, and even tried to sweep the floor. She moved like someone older than her size, but her eyes still carried the weight of grief. Tomas took out an old toy from a drawer, a puzzle cube with glowing edges. It had belonged to his nephew long ago. He handed it to Luma, who took it carefully, eyes lighting up with soft joy. "I remember this," she whispered, twisting the cube between her fingers. "Your people know this toy?" Tomas asked. She nodded. "Tulare children use them to learn language patterns." That made sense, Tomas thought. She was learning his language fast. She had picked up every word he said without needing to ask twice, but something still didn't sit right. That drone from last night, it wasn't a weather drone. It didn't belong to the colony. He turned on his terminal and scanned local feeds. No reports of ships crashing. No calls for help. Nothing about an attack. The forest where Luma had come from was empty according to records. But then, he noticed a small blink on the map, a data point flashing red. A few clicks away from his cabin, something had activated a motion sensor near the abandoned mine zone. "Strange," he muttered under his breath. He turned the screen off, not wanting Luma to see. Later, as night came, Tomas sat by the fire with a blanket over his knees. Luma sat beside him, holding the puzzle cube, still turning it slowly. She had barely spoken for hours, lost in her thoughts. Finally, Tomas asked, "What happened to your father?" Luma flinched, just a little, but enough for him to notice. She didn't speak right away. Then finally said, "I never met him." Tomas nodded slowly, not pushing further. But her hands were trembling again. Suddenly, Luma looked toward the window, her body stiffening. "I hear something," she said, voice sharp, eyes wide. Tomas stood up and grabbed his scanner. Walking to the window, nothing, just snow and shadows. But then he saw its tracks, fresh and deep. Leading up to the barn, someone had been here. Recently, he turned to Luma, who was hiding behind the chair now. "He's found me," she said. The one with the metal eye, Tomas's jaw tightened, and he reached under the floorboard, pulling out an old pulse rifle. "Not tonight," he said firmly. Walking toward the door, outside, the cold bit at his face as he stepped into the snow. He followed the tracks slowly, each one leading deeper into darkness. The barn door was half open, swinging slightly in the wind. He raised the rifle and stepped inside, but found nothing, only silence. But someone had been there, watching, waiting. Back inside the house, Luma was sitting with her knees to her chest. Tomas placed the rifle by the door and sat beside her. He didn't come in, he said, but next time, he might. Luma looked up, eyes full of fear. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have come." Tomas shook his head slowly. "No, you came to the right place." He looked at the fire, then at her. "You're safe now," he said softly, "and we'll keep it that way." Tomas sat outside his cabin as the sky turned gray. Snow had stopped falling, but the wind still carried a bite. Inside, Luma sat curled up in the corner, holding a warm mug in her hands. She had barely spoken all morning. Tomas watched her through the window, wondering what was hidden behind those wide, quiet eyes. The girl had seen something no child should ever see, and still she had not cried. Not once. He walked back in slowly, careful not to scare her. "Luma," he said softly, "I need to go into town just for an hour. Can you stay here and keep the fire going?" She looked up and nodded quickly. "I'll be careful." Tomas gave a small smile, but inside, he didn't feel right leaving her alone. Still, he needed answers, and the outpost was the only place he could get them. He rode his old hoverbike down the snowy path. Engine humming low, the outpost was quiet. A small collection of buildings made of thick steel and glass inside the main office. An old friend waited behind the desk, Marshal Hearn. Tomas removed his gloves and leaned in. "I need you to check something for me," he said. "Ship logs? Last few nights, any crashes, any distress calls?" Hearn raised a brow. "That's random. You expecting company?" Tomas shook his head. "No, someone unexpected already arrived." Hearn narrowed his eyes and began typing after a minute. He frowned. Nothing came through the official routes. No reports, no debris scans. Tomas's heart sank a little. Nothing at all. "Wait," Hearn said, pointing to a flickering alert. "Motion scan, 20 clicks from your place. About 2 nights ago, that's the night she arrived." Tomas said under his breath. "There's more," Hearn added, lowering his voice. "A bounty ping was sent out yesterday, encrypted private buyer." Tomas leaned in. "For who?" Hearn looked serious now. "No name, just a description. Young female, Tulare, last seen near Sector Frostline." Tomas clenched his jaw. "She's being hunted." Hearn nodded. "By someone with deep credits." Back at the cabin, Luma stood by the window. She held the old puzzle cube in one hand, the other hand pressed against the glass. She watched the woods, her breath fogging the window. She wasn't just waiting, she was listening. She could feel him nearby, the one who hurt her mother. The one with the eye that glowed like fire. He was close, and he wouldn't stop until he found her. When Tomas returned, he found her standing right where he had left her. But something was different. Her eyes were focused, sharp. He placed his gloves on the table and sat down across from her. "I know someone's after you," he said calmly. Luma didn't respond. "I went to the outpost," he continued. "They're using bounty hunters, high-level, expensive ones." Still, Luma didn't speak. "Who are they, Luma?" he asked. "Why are they looking for you?" Finally, she turned her face away and whispered, "Because I'm not just a child." Tomas blinked. "What do you mean?" "My mother was not just a scientist," Luma said. "She was a keeper." Tomas had heard that word before. Keepers were rare Tulare who protected knowledge from before the Great Burn. She carried a secret, something ancient, something buried, Luma said, her voice shaking. "When the men came, she gave it to me, but not in a bag, not in a device. She touched her chest, she hid it inside me, in my blood." Tomas's eyes widened. "Inside you?" Luma nodded. "A living key. Only I can access it." Tomas leaned back. "Trying to take it all in? You should have told me sooner," he said. She looked up, her eyes sad. "I didn't think you would help if you knew." He stared at her. Then finally spoke. "You're wrong." Luma's face softened. Her lips trembled, but still. "She didn't cry. She never cried. Not even now, Luma," Tomas said. "You said you never met your father. Is that true?" She nodded quickly, but something about her answer felt off. "Your eyes," he said slowly. "They're not just Tulare. They have human color too." Luma looked down, silent again. "You can trust me," Tomas said, "no matter what." Finally, she whispered. "He was human." Tomas sat still, waiting. "My mother said he was kind, but he disappeared before I was born." She said he was not ready for what I was. And what are you? Tomas asked softly. Luma answered in one breath, half human, half Talari. And the only one of my kind. Tomas stood up and walked to the window. The sun was low now, casting long shadows across the snow. He saw something move, just a flicker. At the edge of the forest inside, he said. Pulling the rifle from behind the door, Luma obeyed without a word, ducking down beside the couch. Tomas stepped outside, boots crunching in the snow. The wind was still, too still. Then he saw it's another drone. This one larger, black, and silent. Floating just above the trees, it scanned the house with a red beam, then flew off into the sky. He came back inside, breathing heavy. They've found us, he said. It's only a matter of time now. Luma sat quietly, her hands clenched. Tomas looked at her, and for the first time, truly saw her not just as a lost child, but something more. She was hope. And she was danger, and both were now under his roof. The silence between them said what neither of them could. They had no choice. They had to run. Tomas worked quickly, tossing clothes and food into a small travel bag. The cabin, once a quiet place of peace, now felt like a trap. Outside, the air was sharp. Heavy with silence, Luma sat on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees, her eyes locked on the fire. She had not moved or spoken much since the drone flew over. Tomas paused and looked at her. We leave before night falls, he said, voice firm but calm. You know they're coming. She nodded slowly, her voice barely a whisper. They won't stop until I'm gone. Or they have what's inside me. Tomas sat down across from her, his rifle resting against the chair. I need to know exactly what's inside you. Luma, he said, if I'm going to help you, I need the truth. All of it. She hesitated, her fingers playing with the corner of the blanket. Then she spoke, her voice trembling. My mother was not only a keeper, she was a builder too. Tomas leaned forward. Listening closely, she studied ancient machines buried under the ice. Luma continued, not from Talari. Not even from your kind. Tomas narrowed his eyes. Precursor tech. Luma nodded. She found something buried deep. A vault with walls made of black stone, humming like it was alive. Tomas had heard stories. Old ones whispered by smugglers and mad miners. Tales of alien machines that could shift gravity, bend time, or open rifts. Things beyond what humans or Talari could understand. What was inside? He asked. Luma closed her eyes, remembering. She said, a seed, not a plant, but a code, a pattern. Something meant to grow into something powerful. She called it the heart of the echo. Tomas stared at her, not sure if he had heard right. The heart of the echo. He repeated slowly. That's not just a legend. No, Luma said. It's real, and now. It's in me. She touched her chest again. My mother said it was too dangerous to leave it in a vault. Too easy for them to take it. So she used Talari genetic coding to merge the data with my DNA. That's why the bounty hunters are after me. They don't want me, Tomas. They want what I carry. Tomas stood up, pacing the floor. Everything made sense now. The silent drones. The high-level bounty alert. The private buyer. With no name, someone out there wanted precursor tech, and they would do anything to get it. Even kill a child. Luma looked up at him, her face pale. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, she said. I just didn't want you to be afraid of me. Tomas shook his head, walking over to her. I'm not afraid of you, he said, but we need to move fast. He tapped a small device on the wall. Activating a hidden drawer, inside was a silver keycard marked with a worn-out logo, UN Vanguard Command. Old habits, he said. Giving her a small grin, Luma tilted her head. You were a soldier. He nodded once, long time ago. During the Outer Rift Wars, I left it all behind. Wanted peace, He paused, eyes growing serious. But peace doesn't last long when monsters want what's buried in children. They packed in silence until Luma spoke again. Her voice soft. My mother said the heart. It could change things. Tomas looked over. How? She said it can rewrite systems, not just machines, but minds, rules, even time. It's not a weapon. It's a force. A force that listens, that frightened Tomas more than any bounty hunter ever could. They weren't just running from killers. They were running from people who would try to control the universe with this force. And Luma was the key to it all. As they stepped outside, the sun was beginning to set. The sky burned orange and red, and long shadows stretched across the snow. Tomas helped Luma into the hover sled and powered up the engine. We're heading north to the old resistance bunker, he said. It's deep in the mountains, buried under ice, hard to track. She nodded, pulling the blanket tighter around her before Tomas turned the sled. He looked back at the cabin one last time. Smoke still rose from the chimney, but it already felt like a ghost. They rode for hours, passing frozen lakes, dead trees, and sharp cliffs. Luma rested her head against his side. Finally allowing herself to sleep, Tomas drove with one hand on the controls, one on his weapon. He could feel it in his bones. This was only the beginning, far behind them. Near the forest's edge, a figure stood in the dark. Tall, cloaked, with a glowing red eye, he bent down, picked up a strand of fine blue hair from the snow, then turned toward the mountains. No emotion on his face, no mercy in his heart, just the hunt. The mountain winds howled like angry spirits. Tomas guided the hover sled through the narrow icy trail, snow whipping across his face. Behind him, wrapped in thick blankets, Luma sat quietly, her eyes scanning the cliffs and sky. She hadn't said much since they left the cabin, but Tomas could feel her fear, silent but heavy. He had once crossed these mountains during wartime. Back then, he had enemies with guns and ships. Now, he had something more dangerous chasing him, silence. The kind of silence that only comes before something deadly. By midday, they reached a cliff wall covered in frost. Tomas pressed a small device against the ice, and a red scanner beam flashed once. A hidden panel hissed open, revealing a narrow tunnel lit by old yellow lights. Luma looked at him with wide eyes. This place is real, she asked. Tomas gave a tired nod. Old resistance hideout. Long shut down. They entered together, the door closing behind them with a heavy thud. Inside, the air was stale but warm. The hallway opened into a large room with metal crates, broken computers, and faded banners hanging on the wall. Tomas walked to the power hub and tapped a few buttons. The lights flickered, then came to life, buzzing softly. This is where I stayed once, after the war, he said, placing his bag down. No one ever comes here. Not anymore. Luma looked around, touching a cracked helmet on a dusty shelf. Feels like ghosts are still here, she whispered. Tomas chuckled once. Maybe. They made a small living space in the corner, set up heat lamps, and warmed food over an old burner. Luma ate in silence, staring at the flickering light. Tomas watched her carefully. He saw the weight on her shoulders, the way she stayed alert even while chewing. She wasn't just a scared child anymore. She was carrying a force, something ancient and dangerous, and Tomas knew, deep inside, that he couldn't protect her forever. Later that night, Luma sat near a cracked screen, watching it flash static. Did you ever lose someone? She asked. Quietly, Tomas nodded. Many a brother, 2 friends, and someone I cared for. Luma looked down. I still hear her voice when I sleep, like she's trying to tell me something. Tomas leaned against the wall. Maybe she is. Sometimes the people we lose aren't really gone, not when we still carry them. Luma looked at him, her eyes wet but not crying. Do you think I'll ever be normal again? Tomas didn't lie. He didn't offer fake comfort, He simply said, "You'll be more than normal." If you survive this, hours passed, and both of them fell asleep. The bunker was quiet. The kind of quiet that made Tomas uneasy. He had survived wars, raids, and monsters in space. He knew peace like this never lasted, and he was right. Sometime before dawn, a beep echoed through the walls. Tomas jumped to his feet, grabbing his scanner. A red alert blinked on the screen motion outside. "Luma, wake up," he said sharply. She opened her eyes instantly. Already alert. "They found us." He whispered, one signal, moving slowly. Luma grabbed her coat, already knowing what that meant. Tomas crept through the bunker tunnels, rifle raised. He reached the outer observation room and looked through the cracked glass. At first, he saw nothing, just snow and stone. Then movement slow, steady, confident. A tall figure approached the cliff wall. One red eye glowing like fire, scanning the area. It was him, Rel, the hunter. Tomas cursed under his breath and returned quickly. There outside, he told Luma, "We don't have much time. We can't leave." Luma said, "He'll see us." Tomas nodded, thinking fast. "There's a back exit, but it's buried under ice. If we can distract him long enough, we might break through." He handed Luma a small device, round and blinking blue. "What's this?" She asked. "Emergency beacon connects to old resistance satellites. If we're lucky, someone out there is still listening, and if we're not, then it'll at least scare him," Tomas said with a weak smile. They moved quickly. Breaking ice near the back of the bunker, Luma used a heating torch to melt the frozen wall while Tomas watched the security screen. Rel was no longer outside heat. Had vanished from the cameras. Tomas felt cold sweat run down his back. "He's inside," he whispered. Lights flickered, and a low thud echoed through the hallway. Tomas raised his weapon, heart pounding. The hunter was coming, suddenly. The door burst open with a crash. Rel stepped into the room. Tall and silent, Tomas fired first, hitting him in the shoulder. But the hunter didn't even flinch. He raised a long blade and charged. Tomas blocked the strike with his rifle, sparks flying in the air. Behind him, Luma screamed, "Tomas!" She pressed the beacon button and the device pulsed bright blue light. Rel stopped. Turning his eye toward it, his systems buzzed, confused by the frequency. Tomas used the chance to kick him back and grab Luma. The back wall finally gave way. Cold air rushed in, and they ran into the icy darkness. Behind them, Vrel roared in rage, but he did not follow. Not yet. They had survived again. But the safe place was gone. No more hiding, no more peace. The next step was escape or war. The wind roared across the frozen cliffs. Tomas and Luma ran through knee-deep snow, breath sharp in their lungs. The stars above were cold and distant, and behind them, the mountains seemed to shiver with danger. Neither of them looked back. They didn't need to. Vrel was close, too close. Tomas held Luma's hand tightly as they stumbled into the forest below the mountain. Tall black trees blocked the moonlight, branches heavy with frost. They didn't speak, didn't rest, just kept moving. Every broken twig underfoot sounded like a scream. Every shadow looked like a trap. They reached a half-frozen stream by dawn. Tomas stopped only to check his scanner. "No signal," he whispered. "He's jamming the area." Luma sat on a rock. Shivering, her lips pale, her fingers touched the beacon in her coat. "Now, cold and silent, we need help," she said, voice trembling. Tomas nodded. "We'll find a way." They followed the stream deeper into the wildlands where few dared to go. The land was raw and wild, filled with sharp hills, icy caves, and old ruins swallowed by nature. Tomas remembered these paths years ago. This was where deserters ran to disappear. Now, he and Luma were doing the same. They found an abandoned mining shelter built into a cliff wall. Rusty doors, half buried in snow. Tomas forced them open and stepped inside. It smelled of oil and mold, but it was dry and quiet. Luma collapsed onto the floor. Exhausted, Tomas sealed the door with scrap metal and stacked crates around it. Hours passed. Tomas boiled snow into water, then heated some protein rations. Luma barely touched her food, her eyes empty and distant. Tomas sat beside her. "Don't give up," he said softly. She didn't reply. "You've survived this. Far not by luck, but because you're strong, still nothing." Finally, she whispered, "I feel broken." Tomas reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Broken people still stand," he said. "I'm proof of that." That night, Luma had a dream. She saw her mother standing at the edge of a glowing lake. The sky above was filled with stars, shaped like circles and lines. Her mother reached out and touched her forehead, then whispered, "The key is not to run, child, but to become." Luma gasped and woke up, breath short. Tomas was already awake, staring at the small screen in his hand. "Motion in the forest," he said, "two signals, one large, moving fast, the other smaller, scanning the area of Vril." Luma whispered. Tomas stood, grabbing his rifle. "We can't stay here." "But we're out of places to run," Luma said. He nodded. "Then maybe it's time to stop running." She blinked, confused. "There's a com tower near the ridge," Tomas said. "Old, but it might still work if we can power it. If we can send a burst transmission to the resistance, someone might come. It's our only chance." They packed fast and left before sunrise. The forest was quieter now, as if the trees were waiting. Every branch looked like it could hold a sniper, every rock a hidden mine. But they moved fast, using old tunnels and deer paths Tomas remembered from the war. The tower stood like a dead skeleton on top of a cliff. It's rusted and broken. Its antenna hung low, wrapped in vines and ice. But the base still had power cables. Half buried under snow, inside the tower station, Tomas kicked the old generator. It coughed, then roared to life, blinking lights on the panel. Luma stared at the control screen. "The code's still here," she said softly. "But it needs a voice imprint." Tomas looked at her. "Yours." She nodded. "It was set to my mother's voice, but I can override it now," as she stepped closer. The console lit up in soft green light. She spoke in her native tongue, her voice calm and steady. The system accepted her, and the screen began to send signals. Tomas watched as data rushed out, racing across hidden frequencies. Somewhere out there, someone was listening. He hoped. Suddenly, the screen flashed red. A new signal entered: unauthorized, corrupted, hostile. "He's trying to jam us again," Luma said. Tomas turned to the door, and there he was. Vrel stood at the base of the tower, looking up like a ghost in the snow. His glowing eye blinked once, scanning them, then he moved fast, climbing the cliff without sound. Tomas grabbed his rifle. "Go to the top," he told Luma. "Finish the message. Don't stop." She nodded and ran up the stairs. Tomas stood by the door, his weapon raised. He had faced worse in the war, but never to protect something this pure. Vrel crashed through the lower door like a beast. Tomas fired twice, missing by inches. They fought, metal clashing with metal, boots slipping on ice, but Tomas stood his ground, blood on his lip, breath short. Above them, Luma reached the final terminal and shouted into the mic. "This is Luma of Talari human origin," she said. "They're hunting me for the heart of the echo. Please help us." The signal burst out into the stars. And far away, a ship's receiver blinked green. Someone heard her. Asterisk smoke drifted through the tower's stairwell. Tomas leaned against the metal wall, blood dripping from a cut on his shoulder. His rifle was broken, and his breath came slow and heavy below him. The stairs were twisted and cracked from the Fight Vrel was gone for, now knocked down by Tomas during the struggle. But Tomas knew he would return. Bounty hunters like him didn't stop until their prize was taken, or they were dead. Above him, Luma stood at the top of the tower, arms trembling. She stared at the communication screen, which now blinked green. A signal had been sent, but no one had answered yet. She bit her lip and whispered into the mic again, "Please, someone. We're not safe." Her voice broke for the first time since Tomas met her. She didn't sound like a secret keeper or a living map anymore. She sounded like a child, afraid and tired. And that was the truth she had hidden all along. Suddenly, the console lit up. A message came through, short and coded, but clear. "Rescue ship inbound. Hold location," Luma gasped. Eyes wide, she turned to call out, "Tomas." "They heard us." But her voice stopped. She heard footsteps below, slow and heavy. Not Tomas, something else. She backed away as the door below burst open again. Rel stepped inside, covered in ash and blood, one eye flickering but still glowing red. He raised his arm and aimed a strange weapon at her. "You've run enough, little map," he said in a cold voice. "I don't want to hurt you, but the code in your body is not yours to keep." Luma's heart pounded. She took a step back. But there was nowhere left to run. Suddenly, Tomas appeared behind Rel with a metal pipe in his hands. He swung it hard, hitting the hunter's spine. Rel growled in pain and spun around. Throwing Tomas against the wall, the weapon fired, hitting the floor near Luma, sparks flying. But Tomas was on his feet again, staggering, wounded. "Leave her alone," he said, voice low and full of fire. Rel laughed. "She's not your daughter, human. She is now," Tomas said, and charged. They clashed again, this time with fists and fury. Luma watched, frozen, until she saw the beacon still pulsing softly on the floor. She grabbed it and remembered what her mother said, "The heart of the echo listens." She placed the device against her own chest and whispered, "I'm ready." Her body glowed, faint at first, then brighter. A blue shimmer covered her skin like light dancing on water. Rel turned, confused, just as energy burst from Luma's body. It struck him hard, knocking him off his feet. He screamed and dropped his weapon, rolling across the metal floor. Tomas crawled over, grabbing her arm. "What did you do?" "I unlocked it," she said, shaking the heart. "It heard me outside." The sky broke open, clouds parting like torn curtains. A massive ship descended through the snowstorm, lights glowing golden white. It was human in shape, but old. Marked with symbols of the resistance, the roof of the tower opened with a groan. A platform lowered, and armored soldiers stepped out. They moved fast, surrounding Tomas and Luma with weapons drawn. Luma stepped forward and raised her hands. "I'm the one you heard," she said. "I'm the carrier of the code." One of the soldiers scanned her, then looked at Tomas. "You with her?" Tomas, breathing hard, nodded. "She's mine." The soldier didn't question it. "Bring them aboard," he said into his comms. "We've got the asset, and she's still alive." As they lifted off, Luma sat beside Tomas in the warm medical bay. She looked at his face, scratched, bruised, tired, but kind. "Why did you come back?" she asked softly. "I couldn't let him take you," he answered. She looked down at her hands, glowing faintly now. "Will they take me away now, to study me?" Tomas paused, then leaned closer. "Not if I have anything to say about it." "You're not a weapon, Luma," he said. "You're a girl, and you deserve to live like one." She smiled, small, but real. "I still don't have a home," she whispered. Tomas reached out and gently held her hand. "You do now," he said. She blinked, unsure. "Can I really stay with you?" Tomas nodded. "As long as you want." She leaned against him, eyes closing, voice soft. "Then I'll stay forever. Above them, the stars stretched wide, endless and cold. But inside the ship, a new warmth had begun, not from tech or war, or lost alien codes, but from two broken souls, now healing together. And somewhere, deep in the code of the heart of the Echo, a new line of logic had been written. Protect this bond, protect this love forever.